different markets. So with that, I would like to introduce our speaker today. Just a second.
Yeah, just give us a second so we can get,
Just so you can get it going.
get this set up so we don't have a bunch of clunky stuff when we
And we pause
start
for a
recording.
commercial.
So yeah, just hold that thought.
Yes, put your phones on silent.
Oh yes, that's the.
Yeah, that one too, huh?
Yeah.
And yeah, Gretchen, just so you know, you're in a good place there, and Randy as well.
Okay.
If you get any further over, you're going to be out of frame.
Okay, so just stand.
Yeah,
right
and
here
then
look.
treat these things
Like
as
people.
just another person.
Right.
Yeah, so
So
you
you
can
can
look
talk to
around
them.
but talk to them.
Right, I've done Facebook Live.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just basically like look right there.
Yeah, you're live now. Waiting.
Oh, hello, Facebook Live land. Let me let you introduce me.
Okay, so I would like to, so I don't get this messed up like I did last week, I'm going to introduce Gretchen Martens. She's our guest speaker today. She is an author, a speaker, and a coach. And I don't really know a great deal about her, but I had the opportunity to speak for about 10 or 15 minutes before the meeting today. And I liked what I heard. She's a fascinating woman. She's got some great experience, and I think the direction that she's heading with her material is right on target with the current generation as well as the older generation. So it's my pleasure to introduce Jennifer.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Well, hello, Facebook Live land. I'm really excited to be here. I actually love the informality of Facebook Live and also lunch meetings. So for those of you who are out in Facebook land, the people here have yellow sheets of paper. I'm going to just explain that for a second. At the top, you'll fill that out at the end are your 3 takeaways, and there's a place to take notes below that. If you're out in Facebook land, you can grab a piece of paper, make some notes, and I think that presentations aren't of much use, and yet unless people have a takeaway. So I think that's really important. So I'm talking today about finding hope in troubled times, and I want to talk a little bit about how I got there, because I'm kind of an expert of living life in troubled times. So back in December of 2016, I was working in what I call the soul-sucking coaching gig, full-time. Loved my clients, really disliked the organization. I'd been there for 2 years. It got very toxic to the point where I couldn't even deliver the quality of services I wanted to my clients. And I actually ended up having sort of a mishap. I ended up in the emergency room thinking I was having a stroke. I'm 55 years old and in perfectly good health, and it was diagnosed as workplace stress. That's a gigantic wake-up call. And so I ended up having several very sad happy hours with friends saying, oh my gosh, I'm so stuck, how do I get out of this? And on March 3rd, I had just an aha moment that I'm not wealthy, I'm single, but I do have savings and I had options, and you don't get a second chance at your health. So I went to bed that night, and literally March 4th at 3 o'clock in the morning, my eyes just popped open and I'm laying in bed, and this is exactly what was in my brain. Boom, 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 boom. I need to quit the soul-sucking job, go to Bhutan, study happiness, and come back and write a book called Think Like Bhutan. So I've been through this sort of sense of having a calling, and it ties into what Dave is doing about vision. I don't believe that many are called and few are chosen. I believe many of us are called, and most people don't even pick up the phone. That's right. And the few of us that do, and they're listening, are like, I don't know. I mean, that sounds kind of hard, and I don't know how to do that, and that would be really inconvenient, and people just hang up. And the only thing that makes me different is I go, okay, I'll jump off the cliff and hit the parachute on the way down. And so far, I'm 55, I'm actually super close to 56, and I haven't died or been maimed or been incarcerated. So, it's like I'm doing okay with that. So I'm laying in bed, I'm like, okay, I know this energy, this is the 4th time in my life this has happened. Apparently I'm going to Bhutan. That wasn't even on my bucket list, but I just knew that this is what I was meant to do. So on March 31st, I left my soul-sucking full-time coaching gig, which actually came with soul-sucking benefits and a paycheck. And April 9th, I got on a plane and I flew to Bhutan via India. This is a really unattractive picture of me at the Taj Mahal. And I spent 2.5 weeks. This is my guide Jamba and my driver Lobsang, and we spent 2.5 weeks driving from the very rugged eastern part of Bhutan west across the country on roads that were kind of like driving through quarries. Like, it makes Yellowstone look super, super developed. And I came home via Kathmandu, Nepal. So I arrived back in Dallas, and it was like, okay, I need to invent this new life. And I'll be telling you a little bit about that. But the reason I share this story is not to yak on and on about me, but because I think that there are things that are universal for all of us. We get stuck and we feel like we can't get unstuck. We're afraid to ask for help. We're embarrassed and ashamed to be like, hey, I'm stuck and I'm miserable and I don't know how to get out. And then we're afraid to listen to our intuition. And so we're like, oh, well, that can't possibly be right. I mean, it makes no sense to leave a full-time corporate job with benefits and spend 5 figures to go to Bhutan, because it's just not a cheap place to go, and to come back with no plan other than to write a book and reinvent your life as someone who's not a multimillionaire. But it's been the best thing I've probably ever done in my life. It's more than all these other things, a true watershed. So what's the deal with Bhutan? A lot of people haven't heard about it, so I want to tell you just a minute about Bhutan. So Bhutan is this teeny tiny little Buddhist kingdom of 700,000 people sandwiched between China and India. And in 2001, they had the audacity to bring a resolution to the United Nations saying that for Western countries, helping underdeveloped countries to move into the 21st century, this is shocking, sit tight, there are more important things than money. And one of those things is happiness. And actually they have a policy called gross national happiness that's written into their constitution. And they are amazing and neurotic about measuring happiness. And so a lot of people go, oh, well, I thought, Scandinavia was the happiest place on earth, because we do what we do in the West, and we took non-Western concepts and we colonized them. And if you look at the global happiness index, what's the first thing they look at? GDP. They've missed the whole point of gross national happiness. So this is a country that it's just unlike any place I've ever been in my entire life. So what is it like to be in a culture that focuses on happiness, on people? And someone asked me like the most silly question. They're like, so what was your one takeaway? It was like, well, I had this life-changing event, and you want me to boil it down to a bullet point, like I'm, writing a Facebook tweet? But that question turned out to be very evocative, because this is what came out of my mouth, because I didn't want to be rude and disrespect the question. I said, well, I realized the entire time I was in Bhutan, and this actually India and Nepal as well, I never witnessed anybody yell. I never witnessed an argument. No one was rude to me or unkind. I wasn't a visitor. I wasn't a tourist. I was an honored guest. And so what I realized about society in Bhutan is that inside of happiness, there's no capacity for anger, hatred, violence, and warfare. There's no ability to have anxiety, depression, to commit suicide. And so these are the things that are tearing our country apart, literally tearing us apart. And this isn't a political statement, but before the inauguration, the American Psychological Association released a study saying that 80% of adult Americans, this was in early January, were stressed, depressed, and overwhelmed by political divisiveness. I haven't met anybody who's not felt those things. So it's just a very, they run a whole different operating system in Bhutan, a whole different energetic system, a whole different way of looking at the world. And so I came back, and my friends, colleagues, whoever listens to me is like, okay, you've got to just share your big vision. So this is what I'm creating in the world, and it's a couple pieces. So I just explained the happiness box and what happiness does and doesn't allow in. The second piece is that in 2009, the Dalai Lama, spoke at the Vancouver Peace Summit, and he said the world would be healed by Western women. I mean, how extraordinary. The head of Tibetan Buddhism points to Western women to heal the world. That actually doesn't make any sense. And the third piece is that the Renaissance in Europe in the 15 and 1600s was caused by 1,000 people. So if you roll that forward to today, because I'm a data nerd, it would take 15,000 Western women, non-Western women, allied thinking men, to create a new enlightenment, to begin to change the patterns, energy patterns and vibration of our world, and make it a happier place where we're reconnected to compassion and empathy. So this is my new mission in the world. It sounds kind of big. I have no clue how I'm doing it exactly. But a week ago, I met my first person. My goal is to have 8 people who want to help me build this by December 31st, 2017. And I met my first person. So I just have 7 to go in the next couple of, 8 weeks. So how does this apply to all of you? How did I get to finding hope in troubled times? Why did I take the time to write this ebook? And at the end, I will tell you how you can get a free copy of this. It started with this post. I don't know how much in Facebook land you can read this, so I'm going to read it. Tragedy, and this was written 2 days after the shooting in Las Vegas. Tragedy reminds us how fragile life is and how much we have to be grateful for. Tragedy is the counterpoint to happiness. It's a reminder to give thanks for all the abundance we have, even if abundance is only that we are alive and healthy, that our loved ones are safe. In tragedy, that which we take for granted becomes a miracle. Life itself is a precious gift. Share your abundance today in prayers, in smiles, and in kind words. Let us hold those who walk today in tragedy close to our hearts, that together we may heal. So I do daily happiness messages. They're free. You can pull out your phone and you text the word happiness to 33222. And I'll be sure to post this on the Facebook post so people can find that. So this was the message on October 3rd, and all of a sudden my Facebook starts blowing up. And people that subscribe to my service are posting this, saying, thank you to @Gretchen Martins for this message, which is not about my ego. It's about there's a need, there's a longing and a calling to find peace and hope in these really, really complicated times. So I took the post and I posted it on, we have a Facebook community called the Happiness Society, @Resilient Happiness. And so I put that post up and I shared it. And within 3 days, it had more than 3,000 views, 167 shares, a bunch of comments, and it was like, wow, that's kind of weird. Like, that doesn't usually happen with my Facebook posts, if I'm going to be really honest. And I have almost 3,000 Facebook friends. And I put it on LinkedIn, and in 36 hours, it had almost 400 views. So it's like, there's an energy here, there's a need for something, which is partly what I'm trying to figure out what that something is. So that's what caused me to write this book that has basically 10 very small chapters. It's very similar to the happiness book I just did, that talks about how do we deal with adversity? How do we keep ourselves safe? And excuse me, I'm just going to grab my water. So one thing that we forget is that adversity is normal. There has never been a time in the world where we don't have adversity, where we're not facing some sort of challenge. And if you think about, there's everything in the world, right? Shootings and hurricanes and earthquakes and fires and all of that. And then in our own lives, we have aging parents and teenagers and our own illnesses and divorces and deaths and all of that. There's always something going on. So we really don't serve ourselves when we start to think of adversity and troubled times as something that's unnatural. We resist it, saying, well, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. And you'll find in the book, and I will I'll give it to you now, and I'll give it to you at the end. If you go to www.123behappy.com, you can download the ebook for free. Hopefully, knock on wood, my tech people have that up and running. It was a little wonky this morning. 123behappy.com.
B like the letter B, or
BE, like the word B. So 123BE HAPPY.com. And so the book has reflections, it has practices, because I am a coach, and so I do a lot of this kind of work with people. And what I didn't put in the presentation today, because you'd be here for 3 hours, it has a bunch of pictures and quotes that walk you through different mindsets around these different issues. So in terms of adversity, looking at where do you have this mindset that somehow this is supposed to be normal. And I challenge you, make a list of all the things that you think aren't normal, and then try to find proof. Because you'll find that you don't come up with any answers. When is there a time when we haven't had war, when we haven't had natural disasters? So that's something you can do to try to ground what you feel isn't natural and move beyond that sense that something is fundamentally wrong. The second thing is verify that it's real. So very often we get stuck up. Oh, okay, I forgot that was there. So this is my favorite new quote of the world. Don't worry that the world is coming to an end, because it's already tomorrow in Australia. So thank you to Charles Schultz of Peanuts. So look at your fear and say, is this real or imagined? A lot of times what we feel is wrong with the world is based in fear and not reality. So it's good to sit down and journal. This is what I think is wrong. This is what I'm afraid of. And see if there's actual evidence. So obviously, if you've gotten a cancer diagnosis, there's something wrong. The whole threat that we're facing right now of nuclear war, we don't really know if it's real. And even if it is real, is there anything we can do about it? Absolutely not. So why waste your precious energy and time worrying about something you have no ability to control? So write down your fears. Talk to a friend about them. If it's something you can't get out of on your own, ask them for help in helping you to change your mindset. That's actually what I did with my friends at these 2 very sad happy hours, where I felt so stuck in this corporate job and my fear about leaving, and my fears around money, but also seeing if I kept up, I probably would have had a real stroke, and then I really would have been in trouble. The third thing is learn to set healthy boundaries. And this is another favorite quote. I'm not in this world to live up to your expectations, and you're not in this world to live up to mine. That's written by actually Bruce Lee. And this photo cracks me up. It's a sadhu, it's a holy man in Nepal, and he's sitting in the temple smoking a cigarette. So he's not living up to my expectations, which is he's supposed to be super holy. And later he pulls out a cell phone and has a conversation. Look at, and there's a woman, Byron Katie, who wrote a book called Loving What Is, and she has some really powerful questions. One of them, when you find yourself feeling all upset, ask yourself, is this my business, someone else's business, or God's business? And I use this almost every single day when something starts to upset me. And as much as I hate to admit this because I'm fairly smart, there's very little I can find that's actually my business. It's mostly somebody else's business or God's business, and it's a way to step back from what you're worried about. The other really good question is to ask yourself, is it true? This is a Byron Katie question. Do I absolutely know that it's true? And this is another thing, right? I'm a professionally trained coach. There's very little I can find that's actually absolutely true. So sit down and look at what's actually going on, and look at where do you have to actually carry those burdens? Where can you give those back to the people that own them? So one thing you can do, make a list of all your worries and fears, and then assign names, and you'll find that most of the worries and fears you're carrying are not your own. They belong to somebody else, whether it's someone in your life, it's the government, it's God, it's somebody but not you, and then let it go. The fourth thing is to make friends with adversity. So most of us, when something bad happens, we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. This is terrible. However, as unfortunate as it is, adversity is the only way that we grow. So I used to do challenge course facilitation, and if you think of a target like for archery, if you just stay in your comfort zone, right, you're on the couch watching TV, eating potato chips and drinking a beer, not much happens there. The only way that we learn and grow is to, well, I can't step because then I'll be out of the camera, but to step outside of our comfort zone. That's how we learn, that's how we grow. So one of the things, and it's taken a very long time for me to get here, when the you know what hits the fan, it's like, okay, I'm not happy about this, but what am I meant to learn? What is the lesson here? How can I grow? So one of the ways that you can make friends with adversity is to actually look back on your life. Take the really, really hard times and write out the things that you've learned. And I can almost guarantee that you'll be really amazed by all the things that came out of adversity. And then take a look at the super happy times, like, your trip to the Bahamas, and write out the growth there. Other than gaining pounds or a suntan, you probably didn't really get much out of that. That would just be a guess. So the fifth is to look to your strengths. And I think this is particularly an issue where we are right now. There's so much going on. There's so much fear and anxiety, and we forget that we're all very, very strong. However old you are, you've survived to this point in time. You have things that you've survived. We all learned how to eat. We learned how to walk. We learned how not to soil our diapers. We learned the alphabet. There are all kinds of strengths that we have. Many people, I'm sure in this room and out there in Facebook land, have survived death of a loved one or a friend, divorces, accidents, illnesses. So make a list of your strengths and really focus on those and remind yourself that you're not helpless. You do have resources. And that's something that you can post and remind yourself, look at it, and remind yourself that you do have time to, you do have resources to focus on the things that are going wrong in your life. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness, it's actually a sign of strength that you know yourself well enough to reach out and say, hey, I can't manage this on my own. Be proactive. And this is something that really, really makes a difference when we're under stress. So there's almost always something that we can do. And in troubled times like these, the very worst thing to do, it's not to have a big vision. The worst thing is like, so I have this master plan for the next 10 years and I'm going to work 80 hours a week. And when we're going through these challenging times, it's time to look at your goals and not let go of the vision, but to realign the reality of your goals with the fact that we all need extra time just to heal and process. You read something in the newspaper, I have an elderly father and stepmom. My stepmom fell down the stairs again, and my dad's been through this so many times. He's like, I can't deal with this, I'm leaving. I'm like, whoa, time out. That took time and energy. That wasn't in my business plan. But yet I wasn't going to say to my dad, oh, so sorry, I don't have time because I have these big goals that I need to do. So make goals that are realistic with what's going on in your life. And that's a way of setting yourself up for success. If you cling to those really big goals, you're always going to see what you haven't done. And so this actually isn't part of goal setting, but I did a women's conference, and they said, we don't know, we're really interested in this Bhutan piece, but we really wanted vision boards. And so I said, what about vision boarding to happiness? They're like, I like that. What is that? I said, I don't know, I haven't invented it yet. But I did by the time of the conference. And what I realized in putting together this 3-hour workshop is when you have a vision board, which is kind of like having a vision or big goals, it's always something that's out there that you're going to have someday. The house, the car, the man, the woman, the trip to Bali, whatever. And when you look at that, or you have big goals that aren't in alignment with troubled times, you're always looking at the distance between you and your goals, and you feel like a failure. You're not a failure because every day you're moving towards what you want, but you've set those goals so far out that you don't feel like you're making progress. So what we did with vision boarding to happiness was we looked at what makes you happy from the inside, the things that nobody can take away. So there was a woman who loved gardening, and her mother's favorite flower was pansies. So she did a happiness board all about gardens, and it had purple just like everywhere of these purple pansies because it reminded her of her mother. So every time she looked at that board, it made her happy instead of making her feel like a loser, that she had all these goals and visions that she couldn't make happen right now. So just think about taking those big goals, aligning them with what's realistic, and then break them down into little steps that you can do every day. And that really makes a difference. If you have a big goal every day, you know, that journey of 1,000 miles that starts with a single step, every day. This is how I got through the end of my 19-year marriage, and I was so overwhelmed with 2 kids involved. And a friend of mine said, you don't have to have all the answers. You just have to every morning get up and do one thing. And that's what I did. And soon enough, that was all behind me. And it was like, wow, how did I survive that? I still don't really have an answer. All I know is every day I just did one thing, the one thing that I could do. And some days it was working on my business. Some days maybe it was cleaning a closet, but at least something got done. So think about that and look at the things that you actually can do. Practice radical self-care, and this ties into goal setting. So when we're in these very challenging times, it is critically important to take care of yourself. And it's, you know, the usual stuff like eat healthy, exercise. Don't drink a lot of alcohol. On the surface, it looks like it takes the pain away, but alcohol actually depresses you. It makes things worse. You know, doctors are happy to prescribe you pills if you really need them. That's between you and your doctor. But look at what happened with the opioid crisis. There are lots of really healthy things, and we'll talk about some of those in a minute, that you can do that actually build up your resilience. So look at what are you doing, what are the things you should be doing? And then rate yourself, 1 to 10. How are you doing? Not to make yourself feel badly, but to look at where you're letting your own care for yourself go. And here's what I don't know, maybe this is making excuses, but I look at, you know, if I had actually stayed at that job and ended up having a stroke, where would I be then? Because I wouldn't be able to work. I live alone. My kids are launched. What would I have done there? It would have been a catastrophe. So you need to take care of yourself. And one of the things when I worked with caregivers, and this is also in the book, so you can download that. It's free, so that's not some weird sales promo in the middle of a talk, is 15 minutes every single day, no matter what's going on. Take a hot shower, have a cup of tea, sit on your porch, whatever it is that makes you feel like you're taking care of yourself. Every day, 15 minutes, every week, 1 hour. And that may seem like a lot, but you need to feed yourself when you're going through caregiving, as we're all going through adversity. Every month, half a day. Every quarter, an entire day. If you practice those little pieces of self-care, no matter how bad the day is, that cup of tea or that hot shower or talking to a friend will feel like you're feeding yourself so that you're able to face the challenges you have. And engage with others. And this is something, so I'll just confess, this is one of my worst characteristics. When times get hard, I shut down. And my friend Joanne years ago, she said, she picked up the phone, she left me a message, okay, I know you're having a hard time because you don't talk to me anymore. And I went, ooh. And I didn't even recognize the pattern. So the harder times are, the more important it is to reach out to other people. And here's the funny thing, you think like, oh my gosh, I can't reach out, you know, they have their own problems. When I've been at the worst times of my life and someone has asked me for help, and I'm able to actually help them, that's made me feel better. And actually science shows that when you commit an act of perform an act of service, like helping someone volunteering at a food bank, it actually boosts your happiness by 17%. So that's quite a bit. So reach out to people and let them help you. Number 9, practice gratitude and optimism. And it's, you know, gratitude is, that's not something new. Keep a gratitude journal. Look for the small things in life. So when I was going through this divorce many years ago, I was taking a class with a coach, a fellow coach, and we had these gratitude practices, and we had to speak gratitude out loud for 2 minutes every day. So I'd go and I'd stand on my patio, and it was such a hard time, and I'm like, I'm really glad grateful for the really great blueberries I had in my oatmeal this morning, and I'm really grateful for the gentle breeze that's caressing my cheek. I really some days had to dig so incredibly deep, but the thing is, I was always able to find things that I was grateful for. So now I have one of those little pocket calendars, and every night I write down 8 things that I'm grateful for, and I've never not been able to get to 8. And then practice optimism. Look for the things that are working well. Make a list of the things every day that went well, where you made progress, things that you're proud of. And you start to build this upward cycle of optimism. Instead of looking at everything and going, oh, look at all the stuff that isn't going right. It's like, look at all the stuff that is going right. And the last is to be present. So this gets to the practice of mindfulness. It has a lot of different meanings in our culture, but it's really being in the here and now. So there's a, I don't have this, there's a saying, when you live in the past, you're depressed. When you live in the future, you're anxious. But when you live in the present moment, you're at peace. And this is a Buddhist concept, but it works for non-Buddhists as well. And, you know, it's one, if you really think about moment by moment by moment, we're all okay. And I have Buddhist friends, and I sort of push back like, okay, well, what if, because I always do this, what if a guy has like a knife to my throat? And the response was, but every minute or every second that he doesn't pull the knife, you're okay. So it's a concept I still struggle with, but it does make sense. If I can just be in the present moment, nobody's dead, nobody's dying, nobody's maimed, everything's recoverable. So just when things get really stressful, and I know it's old, you know, so old school, really take a deep breath and let it out, and just breathe until you can let the stress go. If someone makes you really angry, count to 10. Don't start a fight, avoid the fight, and that'll save you a lot of stress. Closing thoughts. One, if you go to, I have a landing page on 123behappy.com. You can download a free copy of Finding Hope in Troubled Times. It's an ebook. It'll also have information. I have a little happiness book that came out. It's $10. It kind of walks you through pieces of happiness. Hopefully by the end of the month, I'll have Leading Through Adversity. If you're a leader or a manager, it's really, really hard because you not only have everything in the world and everything in your own life, you have everybody under you bringing you their troubles, and you can't sit in the lunchroom and go, oh my gosh, you won't believe what's going on in my life. So this is more geared towards people in leadership. I also, if you like the photos that are in the pictures, I am launching a photography business in January because they are all my photos. The free stuff. So if you text happiness to 33222, you get a free daily happiness message. There isn't a charge. There will never be a charge. I don't like sell ads or anything. It's anonymous because you just show up on my dashboard as a phone number. We also have a Facebook community called the Happiness Society, so we put resources up there. And oh, I'm gonna have to get out my glasses. So this is how I end all of my presentations, is just to leave you with this thought about who you are in the world. You bring a light to the world that's unique. This light was bestowed on you to share with others. Believe that your light makes a difference. Believe that your light will awaken the light in others. Together, our light can burn so brightly that we chase away the shadows and change the world forever. Light your candle and share your happiness with the world. Thanks so much, and if we have time, I don't think we can do questions on Facebook land, but I'm happy to take questions from the people in the room, and then I'll repeat them for all of you out there in Facebook. And for those of you watching live, thanks too for being here. It's really an honor and a privilege.
Thank you. Any questions? Any suggestions? Yes.
I was wondering, you're looking for a couple of things. You're looking for some people to join with you in your mission, and you're also looking for Western women who can save the world. I nominate Janet. Exactly what kind of person are you looking for those students?
It's really someone who is concerned enough about what's happening in our country and in our world that they want to make a difference. I have a lot of resources, but I don't want it to be one of those movements where everybody has to be a mini-me. So the woman that I met is running, it's a brand new co-working and live-work loft space called Good Work, and it's all about generating good in the world. So there's a lot of flexibility, and that's why I want to bring together a group of 8 people to co-create it, because there's nothing worse than wanting to do something and you're somebody's minion. There are lots of smart people in the world. We all have a different expression of leadership, and I think if we all would do the one thing that we could do, if you're Bill Gates, great. He's eradicating disease on the continent of Africa because he's super awesome. I'm super rich, that's awesome. I have a friend who owns an HVAC company in Virginia. He has a huge 4-wheel drive pickup truck, and we don't really know why, but he had the world's biggest snowblower. I mean, he could have snowblowed the North Pole, and it was ridiculous until Snowmageddon hit, and we had 5 feet of snow in a week. And he drove around after he got his own driveway and everything and his own neighborhood blown out. He drove all around Fairfax County, Virginia, taking care of elderly people and disabled people. That was his expression of leadership. So each of us has something we can do, and I don't want to put too many limits other than you're really serious about making a difference in the world. And you know, it doesn't have to be Western women. There are plenty of good men. I take it more as we have power among us. So thank you again. I see Dave standing up, so it's
Well, no,
time.
don't run away. Don't run away.
Oh.
I just want to thank you again for joining us and everything, and I hope that this has been beneficial. One of the things I want to say is this actually dovetails very well with vision, because if you really know where you're going, you know, I agree with one thing you said. It's not a disconnect, in that if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. I mean, the reality of it is, if our plans are not that, our vision is critical. Our plans, moment by moment, can change with the environment. And the key is, I look back at my life, and another thing that you said that resonated with me is that I look at those things in my life that at the time seemed like the absolute worst things that ever happened to me. And now in retrospect, I look at those things, and those have been the biggest blessings in my life. Whether it was the death of my father or any number of things that have happened because of those things, or loss of a job, or financial stress in 2008. Every one of those things led me, because I didn't lose my vision, led me to a place that I would have never been prepared for.
Absolutely.
Had I not experienced that trauma. So, love your adversity talk, and hopefully we got a good recording of it. And again,
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
The whole idea at the top, write at least one action step that you're going to take, because otherwise I've wasted my breath and you've wasted your time listening to me.
Amen
So
to that.
thank
Great.
you.
All right, couple of housekeeping. Next Friday is, let me see, I've got her card here. Susan Younger from Bank Code will be talking to us about how to understand your buyers and how to learn that. So that'll be educational. And then Elliot Jolish is coming the week after that. And then we've got some folks lined up. And but again, I make the offer to those in the room, if you have a signature talk or an educational thing that could add value, like Gretchen has just done with the room. We do 48 a year. So basically I just need your headshot and your synopsis and your bio, and I'll probably have a couple questions, but with the number of speakers that I need to get, obviously want to add a lot of value and also provide an opportunity for those that come. So anyway.
And I know Susan Younger, she's really, really great. Bank Code is a super easy to use sort of personality type. You do it in 90 seconds, and it's much more accessible than stuff like DISC or Myers-Briggs. So you really should be here. She's fabulous.
It's very helpful if you've ever done, you've got to connect. And so if you've ever done any kind of assessment or whatever, when I was a partner at Accenture, we were doing multi-billion-dollar deals. We did a form of assessment with every person that was at the buyer's table in terms of what personality type, what kinds of things, how they make decisions, because a lot of dollars at stake. So basically, we invested a lot in that. So this is, again, it's one of our goals with BGN Talk and with this is to bring to you things that large corporate people have a lot of access to, probably don't appreciate, but as entrepreneurs and as business owners, I want you to have those things too. So that's what we're doing here. And again, I appreciate everybody here. Next Wednesday, we have our regular Wednesday meeting. I will ask you this. Please start RSVPing. I know you're looking in this room and saying there's not a lot of people here. Wednesday, I had 15 people RSVP on Meetup, and I had 32 people in the room.
And today
Okay.
was the opposite.
So I mean, just, yeah. Oh yeah, the dollars. Randy forgot to mention the
I
dollars.
did forget the dollars.
Actually, I forgot because I was supposed to remind him. So yeah, if you can get your,
You don't have to pay.
your dollars, yeah, you're good. But yeah, just that funds our meetup site, and Rob,
Quarterly parties.
and Rob, as you met us, that funds our quarterly